Hello, friends. Welcome to Storycraft. On this channel, you will enjoy world top stories. Let's view the video. What happened to the Roman Empire? The rise of an empire. From republic to monarchy. The birth of Rome in 753 BCE. Rome was founded by the legendary twins, Romulus and Remus. The story of their survival and rise is one of the most iconic in history. Raised by a she-wolf, they became symbols of the city's tenacity and ambition. This humble beginning on the banks of the Tiber River marked the start of a journey that would change the world forever. A republic in the making initially, Rome was a monarchy, but by 509 BCE, the Romans overthrew their king and established the Roman Republic. The shift from monarchy to republic was a pivotal moment. Rome was now governed by elected officials, with 2 consuls at the top, ensuring no single person held too much power. The Senate, composed of aristocrats, played a critical role in advising and shaping laws. This republican system sparked a new era, one defined by the power of citizens to vote and participate in government. It was a radical idea at the time, rooted in a belief in civic duty and equality before the law. The Romans created a balanced system of government with checks and balances, where power was shared among the Senate, consuls, and popular assemblies. Expansion and conquest. Rome's early years were marked by constant wars with neighboring tribes and cities. Yet, rather than being destroyed, these battles solidified Rome's place as a rising power in the Mediterranean. The Romans were not just warriors, they were also brilliant strategists, able to adapt their military tactics to any situation. Their discipline and organization in battle were unmatched. As Rome expanded, it absorbed new territories, incorporating them into the Roman way of life. By 264 BCE, Rome controlled most of the Italian peninsula, and its influence was rapidly spreading throughout the Mediterranean. The Punic Wars, a series of conflicts against Carthage, solidified Rome's position as the dominant power in the Mediterranean world. Victory in these wars brought vast riches and resources, fueling further growth. The struggles of the Republic. However, this rapid expansion came with its challenges. As Rome conquered more lands, the Republic's political system began to struggle under the weight of its own success. The Senate became more corrupt, and the gap between the rich and poor widened. Military leaders, who had become heroes for their victories, began to gain too much influence. Generals like Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus formed the First Triumvirate, a political alliance that bypassed the Senate and took power into their own hands. The Roman Republic was facing internal strife, and it was only a matter of time before one man would rise above the others to take control. The struggle for power between these military giants would eventually lead to the collapse of the Republic and the birth of an empire. The rise of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar's rise was the culmination of years of political maneuvering, military conquests, and public support. In 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River with his army, an act that marked the end of the Republic. With his famous declaration, "The die is cast," he signaled the beginning of the Roman Empire. Caesar's actions were bold, but they would ultimately lead to his downfall. Despite his popularity and reforms, his enemies in the Senate saw him as a threat to the Republic's ideals. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated, but the damage was already done. Rome would never return to its republican roots. The stage was now set for the emergence of the Roman Empire, and Augustus would soon rise to power, becoming the first emperor and forever altering the course of history. The Pax Romana, the Golden Age of Rome, the rise of Augustus. After the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE, Rome was plunged into a period of chaos. Civil wars raged between Caesar's supporters and those who wanted to restore the old republic. But from the wreckage of this turmoil rose a new leader, Augustus, also known as Octavian. Augustus was Caesar's adopted son, and through a combination of military victories, political alliances, and sheer determination, he emerged as Rome's first emperor. In 27 BCE, Augustus was granted supreme power by the Senate, marking the official end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. He cleverly presented himself, not as a monarch, but as the first citizen, princeps, establishing a facade of republican ideals while holding absolute power. This would come to be known as the Principate, and it would last for centuries. New era of peace. One of Augustus's greatest achievements was the establishment of the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. This period, lasting roughly from 27 BCE to 180 CE, was marked by relative peace and stability throughout the Roman Empire. For the first time in centuries, Rome's vast territories were not embroiled in constant warfare. Augustus's military reforms and diplomatic strategies ensured that the borders were secure and that internal conflicts were minimized. The Pax Romana brought about a thriving economy, with trade flourishing across the Mediterranean and beyond. The Roman road system, which stretched over 250,000 miles, facilitated the movement of goods, troops, and information, helping to unify the vast empire. Major cities like Rome, Alexandria, and Carthage became bustling hubs of commerce and culture, attracting people from all walks of life. The golden age of Roman culture. With peace and prosperity came a cultural renaissance in Rome. Augustus, Ai, patron of the arts, encouraged the creation of monumental works that celebrated the glory of the empire. Writers such as Virgil, Horace, and Ovid flourished during this time, producing literary masterpieces that celebrated Rome's origins, its gods, and its military conquests. Virgil's Aeneid, for instance, not only told the legendary story of Aeneas, but also glorified the reign of Augustus himself. Architecture also flourished under Augustus, with the emperor famously boasting that he found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. The construction of grand temples, theaters, and baths transformed the urban landscape. The iconic Ara Pacis, or Altar of Peace, stood as a symbol of the peace Augustus had brought to Rome. The expansion of the empire. Under Augustus, the Roman Empire expanded to its greatest extent. Augustus focused on securing Rome's borders and consolidating power in the provinces. The empire expanded into regions like Spain, Gaul, the Balkans, and the Eastern Mediterranean. Augustus's military campaigns ensured that Rome's reach stretched from the British Isles to the deserts of Egypt, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Euphrates River. Augustus understood that a strong empire required both military might and careful diplomacy. While he expanded Roman territories, he also established client kingdoms and alliances with other powers like Parthia. These alliances helped to secure Rome's borders without overextending the empire's resources. The legacy of Augustus. Although Augustus ruled with absolute power, his reign set a precedent for future emperors. He maintained the facade of republican values while wielding imperial authority, and his political genius laid the foundation for the imperial system that would endure for centuries. Augustus's reign also introduced reforms in government, military and taxation that ensured the empire's stability long after his death in 14 CE. The Pax Romana did not last forever, but the legacy of this golden age lived on. Augustus's reforms, his promotion of Roman culture, and his ability to bring peace to a fractured empire helped to establish a lasting legacy that shaped the Roman Empire for generations to come. Through his vision and leadership, Augustus turned Rome from a republic in crisis into the greatest empire the world had ever seen. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, decline and collapse. A weakened empire. By the 3rd century CE, the Roman Empire, once the beacon of power and stability, was showing signs of strain. The Pax Romana had ended, and the empire was no longer the cohesive and unchallenged force it once had been. Internal decay and external threats combined to create a perfect storm that would eventually lead to its downfall. The political structure of the empire had become increasingly unstable. Emperors were often overthrown or assassinated, leaving the empire in the hands of military leaders and usurpers. The once strong Senate had lost much of its power, and corruption was rampant. Meanwhile, the vast empire became harder to govern, as communication and transportation slowed, and local leaders gained more autonomy. Economic decline. One of the main contributors to Rome's collapse was its economic decline. Rome's vast empire was built on conquest, and as the empire expanded, it became harder to maintain control over its territories. The cost of defending the empire from invasions and uprisings drained the treasury, leading to heavy taxation on the people. In addition, the empire's reliance on slave labor stunted innovation and economic growth, leaving the empire vulnerable to economic collapse when external factors shifted. The Roman currency also began to lose its value due to inflation, as emperors minted more coins to pay for their military campaigns. This inflation, combined with economic stagnation, weakened the empire's ability to sustain its vast infrastructure. Agriculture suffered as fertile lands were overrun by invaders, and trade routes were disrupted by barbarian raids. Barbarian invasions. The most immediate threat to the Western Roman Empire came from the barbarian tribes that surrounded its borders. For centuries, Rome had fought off invasions from groups like the Goths, Vandals, and Huns. But by the 4th and 5th centuries, the Roman military had weakened, and the empire was unable to prevent these groups from breaching its borders. In 410 CE, the Visigoths, led by King Alaric, famously sacked Rome, marking the first time in over 800 years that the city had been taken by an enemy. This was a shocking blow to the Roman world, and demonstrated the empire's vulnerability. While the Romans managed to push back some invaders, they could not stop the growing wave of barbarian migration. In 455 CE, the Vandals, another barbarian tribe, sacked Rome once again. They looted the city and took invaluable treasures, leaving Rome in ruins. The final blow came in 476 CE, when the last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. This event is often considered the formal end of the Western Roman Empire, although the empire had already been in a state of decline for many years. The division of the empire. Another factor in the fall of the Western Roman Empire was the division of the empire itself. In 285 CE, Emperor Diocletian split the Roman Empire into two parts: the Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital at Byzantium, later Constantinople, and the Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome. The division was meant to make governance more manageable, but it also created two distinct empires that often operated in isolation from one another. While the Eastern Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would survive for nearly another 1,000 years, the Western Empire struggled to maintain control over its territories. As the Western Empire weakened, the Eastern Empire became more resilient and prosperous, securing its borders and adapting to changing times. The Eastern Roman Empire, the legacy of Byzantium, the rise of the Byzantine Empire. When the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 CE. It marked the end of an era for Rome as the dominant force in Europe. However, the Eastern Roman Empire, centered around the city of Byzantium, later renamed Constantinople, endured for nearly 1,000 more years. This part of the Roman Empire, often referred to as the Byzantine Empire, became the guardian of Roman traditions, culture, and power long after the fall of Rome. In 330 CE, Emperor Constantine I had moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium, which he renamed Constantinople. Strategically located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, Constantinople became the heart of the empire, its wealth and influence growing in the centuries that followed. The Byzantine Empire's longevity was largely due to its geographic position, its strong leadership, and its ability to adapt to changing circumstances. A strong and strategic capital. Constantinople was an incredible city, both in its grandeur and strategic importance. Built on the site of ancient Byzantium, the city was surrounded on three sides by water, offering natural defenses against invaders. Its walls were some of the most formidable in the ancient world, particularly the Theodosian walls, which withstood numerous sieges throughout the empire's history. The city became a hub of trade, culture, and religion. Its location on the Bosporus Strait connected the Mediterranean and Black Seas, giving it control over vital trade routes between Europe and Asia. The Byzantine Empire grew rich from commerce, with merchants from all over the world passing through. Constantinople, bringing wealth and cultural exchange. Constantinople became a symbol of Roman power in the East, a beacon of civilization in a world that was transitioning into the Middle Ages. The preservation of Roman culture. One of the Byzantine Empire's most important contributions was the preservation and adaptation of Roman law, culture, and governance. The Byzantines considered themselves Romans, and their emperors carried on the title of Roman Emperor. The Byzantine legal system was rooted in Roman law, and the most famous legal code, the Corpus Juris Civilis, body of civil law, was compiled under Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century CE. This legal code influenced many European legal systems and became the foundation of modern civil law. The Byzantines also preserved much of the Greco-Roman tradition in art, architecture, and philosophy. The iconic Hagia Sophia, built under Justinian's reign, remains one of the most impressive feats of Byzantine architecture. Its massive dome and intricate mosaics stood as a testament to the empire's wealth, engineering, and devotion to Christianity. The city was home to scholars who studied the ancient works of Greek and Roman philosophers, keeping classical knowledge alive during a time when much of Western Europe had fallen into intellectual decline. Religious influence and the schism religion played a central role in the Byzantine Empire, and the empire's relationship with the Christian Church would have lasting consequences. Christianity became the state religion under Emperor Constantine in the 4th century CE, and the Byzantine Empire took on a deeply Christian identity. The Eastern Orthodox Church, centered in Constantinople, became the dominant religious institution in the empire. The Church's influence extended not only to matters of faith, but also to politics, with the emperor considered the protector and defender of the faith. The fall of Constantinople. Despite its strength and resilience, the Byzantine Empire faced increasing pressure from external forces. In the 11th century, the empire's borders began to shrink as the Seljuk Turks, and later the Ottoman Turks, advanced into Byzantine territory. Over the centuries, the empire's once vast domains were chipped away by invasions, civil strife, and economic decline. The final blow to the Byzantine Empire came in 1453, when the Ottoman Turks, led by Sultan Mehmed II, laid siege to Constantinople. Despite the Byzantines' valiant defense, the city fell after a prolonged siege, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople was renamed Istanbul, and the Ottomans established their own empire, marking a new chapter in the region's history. The decline of the Byzantine Empire, invasions and internal strife. The rise of the Ottoman threat. By the 14th century, the Byzantine Empire was a shadow of its former self. Internal conflicts, weak leadership, and external pressures from rising empires like the Ottoman Turks contributed to its ongoing decline. The Ottoman Empire, under the leadership of Sultan Mehmed II, began to encroach upon Byzantine territories in Asia Minor, and their influence spread quickly through the Balkans. Economic weakness and social unrest. The empire's economy also began to falter. Trade routes were disrupted, and the once thriving cities became shadows of their former glory. The population of Constantinople dwindled, and the empire's financial instability made it harder to maintain a strong military. This economic weakness was exacerbated by internal strife, as powerful factions fought for control, and corruption plagued the imperial court. Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel Storycraft for more interesting videos.